Kramer vs. Kramer, Freddy vs. Jason, Alien vs. Predator, X vs. Sever, and now Marty vs. Marvel.
You must think I'm pretty sick or something.
Only a little. Since the early 1970s, Martin Scorsese has been changing how we see, hear, and understand cinema. While his film foundation preserves and restores classics that could have been lost to time, the director has helmed 25 features, over a dozen documentaries, and myriad other projects, including some memorable voice acting.
Find a happy place. Happy place.
There is no happy place with him around.
Lately, Marvel has been grinding Marty's gears. An interview in which Scorsese referred to the $22 billion comic book franchise as not cinema and closer to theme parks than movies drew responses from MCU directors like Jon Favreau and James Gunn, as well as Avengers Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson.
I don't judge people on their worst mistakes.
In early November 2019, Scorsese defended and explained all that shade in the New York Times, right as his new film, The Irishman, opened in New York and LA for awards consideration.
I'm not afraid of tough guys, are you? I didn't think so.
Now, a film feud like this is great publicity for the premiere and to keep us talking about Marvel and Marty all the way up through the 2020 Oscars, where Avengers Endgame and The Irishman will likely go toe-to-toe for Best Picture.
I know you read a lot of things about me. I just want to say I'm sorry.
And despite Scorsese's claim that one is cinema and the other is not, the two movies have similarities that we can't ignore. I mean, just look at the two casts. In the same way that Endgame pulled together stars and sideliners from 22 films, Scorsese has assembled career-long collaborators Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro.
That's entertainment.
With one big fish who even Scorsese had considered unreachable.
Hiya, Frank. This is Jimmy Hoffa.
Glad to meet you.
Well, Hoffa's been unreachable since he vanished in 1975, but we're talking about Al Pacino, who breathes new life into the labor leader and his mysterious disappearance. With The Irishman, Scorsese seeks to solve the unsolvable case with a film that spans over a half-century of a hitman's greatest hits.
You ever hit anybody?
On a job?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
De Niro, Pacino, and Pesci, all three being gunslinging septuagenarians, had to be de-aged via visual effects to embody their characters from the 1940s up through the early 2000s.
They're all gone. Frank, it's time. It's time you say what happened.
Now, it may not be an MCU movie, but Marvel's X-Men The Last Stand was the first to employ this style of CGI de-aging, with Professor X and Magneto getting a facelift for the opening scene.
Charles, I like this one.
2019's Captain Marvel and Avengers Endgame both advanced de-aging to an art form for the MCU, while Scorsese found that the process took months and millions to perfect on his epic Irishman.
We're going to war with these people.
Now, Scorsese has worked in nearly every genre, but he'll be remembered for his mafioso masterpieces, super-heroic stories of Italian-American crime bosses shaping America, intermingling true accounts from the mean streets with and without historical accuracy to create our country's, specifically New York's, violent origin story.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
And come on, nobody does violent origin stories quite like Marvel. Scorsese almost worked on one himself for comic book competitor DC, but instead decided to focus on finishing The Irishman. His producing partner, Emma Tillinger-Koskov, stayed on the all-too Marty-inspired Joker to the very end, whether they considered it to be cinema or not.
Well, no one's laughing now.
You can say that again, pal.
Lastly, we can't help but notice a certain New York watering hole that's popped up in 3 Scorsese pictures and a slew of others, including one Pacino venture with director Brian De Palma.
Don't you appreciate that? The movement, the rhythm.
The Copacabana is like Marvel's Stark Tower, a common space for MCU members to meet and make merry, or in the case of Goodfellas, for Martin Scorsese to bring together his players in one of cinema's most incredible long-take tracking shots. And he pays homage to this shot in an opening scene in the nursing home in The Irishman.
They took care of that thing for you.
Marty and Marvel have some common threads, and the sheer career-capping scale of The Irishman leaps off the screen, much like Endgame's spectacle brought in billions for Marvel. That's why we consider The Irishman to be an integral piece of the mobster cinematic universe, one that Scorsese has been developing for decades, alongside a few mafia movie legends.
Get the fuck out of here, Tommy.
I almost had him! I'm sorry!